Hello, people of the cardboard, and welcome back to Fun Decks. So today I want to do something a little different from my normal content. About a couple weeks ago, we got the second wave of RB support announced, and now that they're in the TCG and is legal, I've played around with them and want to kind of share my thoughts about how the deck actually should be built and played, because I think most people, when they read the second wave, they were disappointed. I think everyone was hoping that we would get a few cards that really, started or gave you starters for the deck and really tied it all together, and we didn't get that. The deck is kind of in a weird spot because the RB cards don't play extremely well with other decks, because you can't control non-RB monsters to summon any of the extenders from your hand. But none of the cards are one card starters, or none of the monsters at least are one card starters. And so this kind of creates an awkward situation where you have to combine them with other engines, but they don't actually blend well with other engines. So the kind of begs the question, what is the best engine to try to combine with RB? So that's what this video is going to be talking about. I'm going to show you a few different deck piles and kind of share my thoughts on what engine I think works best with it. All right. So this is kind of a pure RB profile, as close as you can get to it. Plays almost 20 RB cards, and then just a small engine to get you a couple machine bodies. So the goal of it really, or the main benefit of this version of the deck, is that you can play RB Stage Landing without having to worry about the conflict. Because Stage Landing now with the new support is actually really, really powerful. In case you don't remember what this card does, it basically lets you e-tele RB monsters from your main or extra deck, and it's a non-once per turn effect. And the cool part about it too is that in the graveyard, if your RB monsters would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can banish instead, and neither of those effects are once per turn. The downside, though, is that if you use its effect, if you just activate it, not its protection effect, if you activate it, you're locked out of the extra deck except for machine monsters with 1500 attack or less. And this is a retroactive lock. So this means that if you summon out of the extra deck, this card's just dead. Right? If you summon anything that isn't a machine with 1500 attack or less. So a lot of the decks that were trying to play RBs before would actually just lock you out of playing this card. So most people were just playing a smaller, more splashable engine. But now that we have more cards, both main and extra deck cards, I think you can play this as a pure engine, and this is a big reason to. Against decks like Lunalight, this is huge because you can just kind of go immediately into a Brute Blues, use Brute Blues to get your stage land or Funk Dock, which then searches you another stage landing. If your opponent tries to use their Big Towers monster to pop you or pop it, you can just banish the stage landing to protect. So this is huge. This is also really good into Mitsurugi because they likewise have a Regeki, which doesn't really hurt you at all just because of this card. So it's very, very powerful. And so the sub engine I chose to play was Scrap Recycler with a Jet Synchron, and you can also play Mechanist Citadel with this. So this is actually surprisingly powerful, and in a second I'll explain why. But it's my favorite engine to play, and I think it's pretty much better than every other engine, or at least mini engine you can combine with the pure build. And this is because you can get into your Lando Cannon in under 5 summons. This is kind of key because Lando Cannon, I thought, again, was a very, mid card when it was first, or when I reviewed it first. But after, looking into that and seeing how it plays more, it's actually pretty powerful. So, for example, you can go Scrap Recycler, send your Jet Synchron, pitch a card from your hand to bring it back, then turn both of those into the RB Falcon booster, and then use this, search Funk Dock, and then search Stage Landing. And then Stage Landing can e-tele out the Land Cannon from your main deck. The benefit of this, is you can, now that is your 4th summon, so you can use Land Cannon's effect, which is, again, pay 12, destroy Land Cannon, and if you do, you can then look at your opponent's hand and summon a monster from it, but its effects are negated. This is the best RB card in the deck, right? This, or at least any of the main deck cards, this is the best effect. And really changes how the deck can play. Because this is an effect you can activate going first anytime. That's like the big thing about it. The actual effect itself is broken. I'll get into that. But the deck didn't have a consistent method of actually using RBs the main deck monsters during your turn if you were going first. And that kind of held you back. Because when you do activate any of these and they destroy themselves, well, you have Funk Talk, you can then go into or just ETL a different one out from the deck. And that's great. But the actual effect you get with Lamnican is huge. Against a lot of decks, so as I alluded to before, you can use this to remove Nib from the equation, which is great because this deck does have a great way of playing around that. And against a lot of decks, you can set up like 4 negations. So not only having the hand knowledge is key for like using those to stop them from playing, but you can just rip a starter out of their hand. Or if they have an Ash Blossom they were saving, or a Ghost Spell or something that they didn't use, you can just summon to their field and the effects are negated. So it's kind of a dead body. Against decks like Yummy, if they have a hand trap like Nib or Ash or whatever, you can just force them to summon it and it really shuts them down because they get locked out of their Sky Striker package and they get locked out of Obedience School. So all that's really nice. This is my favorite RB. It just does suck that it doesn't have the extension effect. What this means too is that you can use Funk Talk after you use Lambda Cannon to summon out your Lambda Blade, which will then mill you a third name. Usually I go GA10 Cutter. So the reason you do that is because the new extra card, Shepherd's Crook, needs you to have 3 names in rotation for you to use the revive back, right? So usually your end board you're looking at pretty consistently is getting a Citadel Engrave, a Shepherd's Crook in your EMZ, and then usually having one name, either your Cutter or your Lambda Blade with Lambda Blade and Lambda Cannon, and then in your graveyard, and then Cutter on your field with Funk Talk active. And you then have at least one of the RB trap set. I tend to prioritize next phase because it's just an eruption. So this means that you get Monster Negate, Spell Trap Negate, and then once you have popped your Cutter, or if you kept the Lambda Blade, you can use that as a stealing card, right? You can then both E-Telly out like your Driller for Monster Pop, and you can use your Shepherd's Crook to revive whichever RB you didn't keep on field. So it's a lot. It's pretty good interruptions. And again, just having the hand knowledge really does set you apart and makes things a lot cleaner because you know exactly what to negate. Because you're not going to make the strongest end board, but it is pretty good. And so you just need to know that like exactly what your interruptions are. Clockwork Knight, this is part of a combo. You will go into Clockwork Knight and then use it to send Operation Test to summon it, and then go into Barricade Board Blocker to pitch it, and that can get you your Scrap Recycler. So Scrap Recycler can be searched out if you start out with any of your RB Sage Landing or your Funk Dot. But you can also use Scrap Recycler to start your combo. If you're interested in seeing combos, let me know. I can kind of go through them. But overall, I think this is just the cleanest mini engine you should play. You can play Machina, playing 3 Gear Frame and 1 Unclasper is an option. I've seen people do that. The downside is, although Unclasper is basically just a free summon and send Citadel to grave on its own, the problem is that you can't actually resolve the Landican summon once you use Unclasper effect because it locks you into machines, not just from extract, but in general. And so unless you're playing a machine deck, I don't think it's worth it. I think the hand rip and hand knowledge is just too good. You can use Landican even if you're under the lock. You just won't get the knowledge. So likewise, you can play the Terratop engine. This is nice. It preserves your normal summon, which is great. And you can just always normal summon the Terratop and use it to search Symptom and summon it out too if you can't summon it. There is obviously the conflict that if you have any of your RB monsters on the field, you can't actually go into Terratop, but it is okay. And then the big one that I think a lot of people are hyping is the Sky Striker package. Playing 3 engage, 1 Hornet Drones, and then maybe even a Widow Anchor in your main deck, and then a slew of Sky Striker cards in your deck. This is pretty good. It's nice because you can go into your Valcam Rocket or Valcam Booster without having to use your normal summon and just through these cards, which is really great. And then obviously getting a Widow Anchor just as interruption in case you're going second is pretty good, especially because you have so much destruction based removal in your deck. You definitely have room to cut if you want to combine this with your scrap recycler. You can just cut out the duplicates RB names, maybe even remove the pile bunker. But I like it. I like it right now as pure, mostly because I feel like the Skyscraper engine, while it is powerful, preserving your normal sum doesn't really matter, because you don't have a good normal summon outside of Scrap Recycler. So although it is nice, and I do think it helps if you do um, keep it your normal summon saved, just so you can go for the Clockwork Knight combo. Um, I think these cards just have the inherent anti-synergy, because you kind of are in an awkward situation. If you have any of your RB extenders, you can't summon them and then use the Sky Striker cards, and likewise you can't use the Sky Striker cards and then summon these. So it just kind of makes things odd. So if you go and go engage into Hornet Drones into Kagari and your opponent imprims you, you're kind of just screwed. There's not anything you can do. That's why I don't love it. The other reason is that a lot of the cool Sky Striker cards, if you want to play a more comprehensive Sky Striker package, Ace Zero is 2K, so this conflicts with your stage landing, which is, again, is the most powerful card in your deck. And if you're playing the pure, I think you should lean into it. We also don't have a couple of the pieces. They're still locked in the OCG, like Camellia and then the Proto type one. A couple other cards you can play in the pure build would be you can play Thrust, because it's great for stage landing. And then you can also play Foolish Barrel of Goods, which can get you into a Clockwork Knight, which searches out the Scrap Recycler. Or you can, and then combo that with a Black Gold Blast. So that's an option too. That might be a better engine, honestly, but it's pretty good. Anyway, so if you don't want to play the pure build, I think the next build people have kind of looked into is Rescue Ace. The main benefit of Rescue Ace is they do not touch the extract really at all. And I think there's a lot of hope for this build, just because, keep in mind, Rescue Ace has been announced as the next card, and I think the OCG's Tactical Tri-Deck or something. And so that and Exorcisters are expected to get support released pretty soon. So we got indirect support through Doom of Dimensions with the new Link 2 monster. And it's all right. It's kind of helps the Rescue Ace, but it's not really good in the RB build. But hopefully they do get a new extra or Link monster. It is a machine, and with 1500 tech or less, because again, the best part of this engine is that you can play stage landing with no conflicts. And the engine itself is pretty good. It does increase your M board quite a bit. So just starting with an airlifter can get into the same place you were before, with usually 3 or 4 interruptions from your RB cards. And then you, of course, have your Rescue Ace spell trap set. So that gives you a couple extra interactions with monsters. Now, I'd say the reason I don't love this is that Rescue Ace, you need a pretty good engine to play. So in this, I was throwing out 3 Impulse and a Fire Engine just to increase the number of monsters. Because even Emergency on its own doesn't really do anything. You need to have a Rescue Ace name to combine or combo with it. So it is fine. I think the other part too is it's kind of a win more strategy. This just increases your board if you're going first, but going second, the Rescue Ace cards don't necessarily help you outside of, Impulse into a Fire Engine to get you more bodies. And obviously Preventer is a Book of Moon if you were able to keep it with your Hydrant. But I think I like the fact that it adds Spell Trap interruptions to the deck, because I think the pure build is very susceptible to cards like Dark Ruler no more. But I think this build or this engine doesn't help you break boards, which is kind of an issue. And of course, because you're playing so many Rescue Ace cards, you really had to cut down on the RB cards. And it kind of just means that your RB cards are more fragile. Too. So I don't love this build, but I think if you do want to play something that's not just pure, I think this is probably the best bet if you're trying to do stage landing. As we move on, the next couple decks kind of start to diverge a bit. So this is RB Cyber Dragon. This is pretty popular. It has a high amount of consistency because Core and obviously Cyber Emergency are 1-card stars for the deck, which is really nice. And you can play underneath the stage landing lock. Okay. It's not great, but you can, because you can go into I'm not Hersavorag, which is nice. It is basically an additional spell trap interruption. But the benefit of this is it's very consistent, and you can do a lot. If you want to forego your RB Sage Landing plays, you can just go and set into Infinity, which is a house in itself. And this deck is just, it's very clean. It can do a lot. It can OTK very easily, which I think back in the past, in the first wave of RB, the deck struggled to do. I will say RB really doesn't struggle anymore to OTK because just a Stage Landing into a Brute Blues, into another copy of Stage Landing into a Shepherd's Crook, like that's 8k damage. But I still think this gives you a nice engine to perform. The way you get 2 machines on board is just Summon Core, Search Out, Cyberdark Realm, and then use Realm to search out your Cyberdark Chimera, and then you can normal summon it with your additional normal summon provided by Realm. Link this off in the Clockwork Knight, use Chimera to ban your worm, and then you're kind of off to the races. This deck, I will say, it's one of the cool things it does is it plays very well with Clockwork Knight, which actually should be here. So let's just throw this for you first. It's really good in the Clockwork Knight. Clockwork Knight is just naturally search because you play now additional continuous spell besides the RB one. You can do a lot with that. And I think the added benefit too is that if you are going second, this is great because you just throw up a Clockwork Knight, summon a core, any of the Cyberdrag monsters, and then you can go and fusion off your opponent's entire board with Chimera Tech. It's also pretty good into Canine Christian if they keep anything in the EMZ because you obviously have Mega Fleet. I think the biggest conflict, my main hesitation about this is it's still susceptible to cards like Dark Ruler more, even more so than the pure build because you don't actually play Citadel at all, which is kind of a different form of interaction. And also, if you play against anyone who is concerned about Canine Christian, people have been playing Mega Fleet or siding it in, and that just hurts this deck because only Canine Christian that can kind of suck up anything they put in their EMZ with their Infinity. You need a monster in EMZ. You need to have either Shepherd's Crook or a Brute Blues there to really capitalize on any of your RB effects. So it's actually a big issue. And if you ever play Amir, obviously Chimera Tech is a problem too. But I doubt people would throw this in because you almost always will have a Cyber Dragon. So Mega Fleet's your main concern because it can kind of just get rid of your board. And once you lose your RB Link, the deck is cooked. So I think this isn't the best build with the current meta. Maybe if Canine Christian dies out and people stop siding it, it's fine. But it's an auto win against this deck. The next deck is RB Orcust. Orcust is a pretty good engine because I will say Girsu, the Orcust Magnite, is the best normal summon engine to get into your RB combos. Not only does it's great at Foolish and Orcust on summon, you get your tokens, but you can, even if you are Ashed or Impermed, you can almost always get into your RB combos because if this does get Imperm, which is the worst case scenario, you just turn it into the new Orcust Link 1, use its effect to add Crown to hand, and then summon Crown to the arrow that Link 1 has. And then that's 2 machines. You can go into Valcam Booster. So that kind of gets your combo started, which is really nice. I think this actually helps a lot because it gives you an Omni Negate trap. So this is a deck that actually can play through Dark Ruler no more, right? Which is a big issue with the deck. It also gives you additional plays if you do get Drolled, for example. Droll is also really hard for RB to deal with. So the fact that the Orcust combos don't really add cards from deck to hand outside of the new Link 1, everything else just sets, you can still make a really good board, even if you do get Drolled. And the cool part, too, is that because you play from the graveyard, it just plays in a way very different than the RB cards do. So it's really hard for your opponent to counter. And I'd say the last pro of this deck is that you can theoretically play into Stage Landing, the lock, because if you just turn this, you can still just set up, put some of your Orcust cards in grave, and then go into the Link 1, do that same combo I described before, and get into your Link 2. None of that, because the Link 1 is below 1500 attack and is a machine, you can still use Stage Landing. So I think there's a lot of positives to it. The main issue I found in trying to play with this is that you have to be very careful how you sequence your combos. because if you do want to actually get the full board, you need to go into your RB combos first, right? To get your Valken booster searches and everything. And then you have to stop and go into Galatea, and then you can use like Valken booster to summon something from your hand or grave, right? And then you can start using your Orcust combos to summon and lock yourself in the dark for the rest of the turn. So it's very weird, right? Because although you do have Lambda Cannon and Lambda Blade, which are darks, as well as the new Shepherd's Crook, right? So you can summon those once you're locked in. But if you want a one card combo, you have to go into Valken Booster and start using its effects and stuff before you can do any of your Orcust plays. And so it again makes the deck kind of clunky. You'll find yourself in corners where you can't really get the board you want to. And in many ways, although it's nice because you can usually get the RB counter trap and the Orcust counter trap both set up, which are very powerful, and usually almost always get a Shepherd's Crook with a Orcust Link monster. You just can't have, I'd say, a really stacked graveyard, nor will you necessarily have Dingirsu to summon back, or the new, like if you want to do, for example, the Link 4's interruption, you won't usually get that. And so I think in many ways, I've heard people really like the K9 Orcust build. It might just be a cleaner deck. And the other last issue that is important to mention is that you kind of have a competing field spell problem, right? You want Orchestrated Babel in your field so you can start using some of your like Dingirsu summon back to non-targeting send stuff. Or if you want to use the Link 4, right? So you want the Babel on your field during your opponent's turn, but you also want Funk Talk in order to get your RB combos. And so you kind of have to pick and choose. Honestly, I like the RB stuff more. So you'd like to keep it. But again, your goal is to have stuff in the graveyard that can do things. And it's nice to have follow-up, but it's better to have interruption. So I think this deck is fine. It's just a little awkward. And if Galatea was 1,500, not 1,800, this deck would be great. This would be perfect. And I would just forego a lot of the other extra tools, but it's not, alas. The last deck I want to go over is RBK9. This is a weird build. Basically, I got this idea by playing K9 Crystron a lot of the time. What you found is you would just be left with, I didn't put it on here. You'd be left with a River Stormer and then a Scrap Recycler, right? Oftentimes, you didn't really have a whole lot to do with it. Or do with them. But now, right, with the RB cards being pretty good, it is a cool thing if you can go, do your classic Jokel play to go into your Ripper search Lantern, and then once you have those second Lantern and Jokel from grave into the River Storm, you can search out the new K9 main deck monster, use it as a normal summon, get hand knowledge if you want, and then link those both into your Valken booster. There's other combos too, which is really nice. And the big benefit of this deck is it doesn't lose the Droll, right? Because you can make Ripper first if you're really concerned about that. It doesn't lose to Nibiru. And you can still access the hand rip, which is, again, very, very clean. So I like this build. I think it's fine. I'd say my major issue with it is that you don't have any plays from graveyard like you do with K9 Orcust, right? They do the same thing. They just have a Scrap Recycler that they search out for the Stormer and summon that, and then that bins a Harp. And so that's how they can come off. You can't do the same thing with your RB cards. They don't really have that great synergy. And also, you really can't play Stage Landing. I threw 2 in just to have because it's nice, but if you do Stage Landing, your K9 cards are pretty much dead. It's a nice idea in theory, but I think unless you can combine it with a third engine, like maybe doing a K9 RB Orcust, so you actually can like use your River Storm to get Scrap Recycler to send an Orcust card and use that, I don't think this engine is super great. So personally, if I were to choose one and kind of answer the point of this video, which is what's the best engine, I would just play Pure. I know it's kind of a very long-winded way of saying that, but I think honestly, 3 Scrap Recycler and a Jet Synchron is a really, really good engine. And the cool part about this is you have great discard fodder. Your Landed Blade and Landed Cannon, you don't really care about in a hand. They're dead. And you can revive them from graveyard off of Valken Booster. So using cards like Clockwork Knight Engrave, or using your Jet Synchron to summon, or if you're using Forbidden Droplet or any other discarding engine, is pretty good. You really don't have too many issues from it. So I like this a lot. I think this is very clean. I think the only change I might make is if you want to cut back on your duplicates, which I'm playing mostly just because extenders help you play through like hand traps on Scrap Recycler. If you want to play maybe a Sky Striker package or just play a Tear Top engine instead, I think that's definitely fine. I think there's a lot of options there. Or if you just want to make room for Thrust or Foolish Brave Goods, I think that could work. But for now, this is the build I'm going to be playing. But let me know down below what you are going to give a shot, or which engine you think actually is going to be best. And I hope, I think what's very promising about RB moving forward is that, unlike other decks, I don't think this needs direct support. This is a deck that just needs there to be a good extract monster with 1500 attack or less. That's it, right? So if Konami ever releases that, if it succeeds, or a Link monster or whatever, as long as it's good and decent, this deck can splash it in. I think it could really solidify what the deck is going to be. I think right now it's probably going to be on the higher end of Rogue, hopefully. But I'd love for someone to actually make this meta. Anyway, with that, that's all I got. And fun decks. We'll see you soon.